The AAUW is the American Association of University Women, and it was founded in 1881, which fact I actually just found out tonight. I knew it was the 1880s, but I didn't know that year. And the mission is to advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. And that sounds like a lot, but basically we really care about gender equity and work hard towards that in kind of everything we do, and the national organization is the same. They give away millions of dollars in graduate education scholarships every year, and there's info about all that over there. But the Middlebury chapter meets once a month from September to May. Some meetings are social, some meetings are presentations open to the public. Last year, for instance, we had public meetings with a guest beekeeper, Ross Conrad, and he talked about in support of birds, bees, and butterflies, the challenges and what we could do for them. And Clara Calitri was very involved in making that happen. And then we had Jack Mayer, the author of Life in a Jar, the Irena Sendler Project, and Before the Court of Heaven, 2 wonderful books. He was fascinating, talking about his books and the kids that got really involved in it, and it was just fantastic. Next month, on November 16th, Dr. Emily Glick from Bristol Family Health, is that the name of the practice?
Bristol Internal Medicine.
Bristol Internal Medicine. Along with 2 or more members of her team from their office will be coming. They've been involved with treating opiate addiction for years, right out of their office. And it's an amazing thing they do. They're going to do a presentation tentatively called Medication-Assisted Treatment for Opiate Dependence, both chemistry and counseling. And the work she does is important and fascinating work, and we'll have more publicity out about that, but we hope folks will join us for that. And if you want to know more about this particular presentation, Peg Delgado, one of our co-presidents, knows Dr. Glick very well, and we'll be glad to talk to you about it. So, enough of that. On to tonight. I'm so pleased we have author and illustrator Ashley Wolff here with us. Ashley is a daughter and granddaughter of artists. Her abilities as an author and an illustrator are amazing, and her books are here for sale. If you wish to purchase any tonight, have her sign them. For children, grandchildren, people having a baby soon, anything like that would be wonderful gifts. She's written and or illustrated more than 60 books for children, and you can see those titles there. I'm not going to go on and on anymore, so we can get right to Ashley. And note that the talk is being videotaped by MCTV tonight, and will be broadcast at some later time. I assume it's not live, is it? No. Okay, so there we go. I should have thought more about the please welcome Ashley Wolff.
I'm going to speak without a mic. Can people hear me? Yeah? Okay, so thank you to Mary for inviting me. I am Mary Hogan was my alma mater, so I have a very soft spot in my heart for it, and have visited a couple of times. And now that I'm back in Vermont, living here full-time, I hope I get invited again. So she mentioned that I am the daughter and granddaughter of artists. Probably some of you knew my parents. They are unfortunately both dead now. My mom just this last May, but they were Klaus and Jan Wolff, and then she later became Wolff Van de Velde. And I grew up in Middlebury my entire life, went to high school here, and then went to Rhode Island School of Design, where I majored in illustration and printmaking. And I'm going to talk to you about how, unlike most of the people who went to Rhode Island School of Design, I actually make a living as an author and an illustrator. It's not easy. Anybody who has ever worked as an artist will tell you that you have to have a lot of plates spinning in the air to make a living. And one of my plates is that I've been writing and illustrating books since 1984. And I started out by making books set in Vermont. I've written down my talks since I like to be able to refer to my notes. There's some quotes on here. So I hope you don't mind if I refer to them occasionally. I wanted to start with a quote from Jane Yolen. She's a novelist and picture book author. All writers write about themselves, just as the old storytellers chose to tell stories that spoke to and about themselves. They call it the world, but it is themselves they portray. The world of which they write is like a mirror that reflects the inside of their hearts, often more truly than they know. She also said, ideas are the cheapest part of writing. They're free. Now, the hard part is what you do with the ideas you gather. So, I'm often asked how I get the ideas for my picture books. Children ask me, adults ask me, and I always answer with the same answers, which are, do you have a passion? Do you have a hobby? Do you have any special talent? Do you read? Do you teach? Do you have a story to tell? Who do you know best? Yourself. Childhood in every generation has common challenges, joys, and sorrows. So this is a picture of me in my first home in Middlebury in Chipman Park. I don't remember which house it was, but I lived 3 places in Middlebury. One in Chipman Park, out on Washington Street Extension, and then the rest of my childhood on Chipman Hill. Ask yourself, do you have parents? Do you have siblings? Do you have pets? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in the city? Did you grow up in the country? Did you grow up to somewhere where we have extreme weather? All of those things contribute to the stories that you have to tell. So many people think that their lives are ordinary, boring, have nothing really to make them stand out. Everybody's life is outstanding. It's just, you take it for granted, but it's interesting to everyone else. We take this kind of weather for granted, right? In parts of the US, this would be really pretty radical. What's your most vivid memory? Mine is breaking my leg in 4th grade at the Snow Bowl during winter carnival. And I was supposed to be in the ice show that evening, and I couldn't be in the ice show, and I was so disappointed. It was really the worst day of my life, although this must have been a couple days later, because I'm smiling, and my cast has all sorts of decorations on it, so I must have gotten over it. When I love things, or people, or places, I draw them. And I always have. Even at age 4, I was trying to capture my sister's unique qualities. I want you to take note of her hair and her fat stomach. And tell me if it doesn't look just like her. And here's a portrait of my mother from a few years later. Her lipstick is perfect, but her arm is a little tiny bit long. So story ideas are often sparked by the things that I take. When I take things that I love and add a little imagination and spice. So here's a story. I don't know what it is. I haven't written this yet, but I tend to simplify my job of writing stories and putting them into 4 types, and I'll briefly talk about them. There's a concept book, which is alphabets, numbers, colors, seasons, months of the year, that kind of stuff. There's a character-driven book where you have a charismatic main character who drives the action along and who everything revolves around. There's a plot-driven book, which is like a little play or a fable where there's a cast of characters, time passes, and the activity is what's most important. And then what I really prefer to do is a hybrid book where it's a combination of a concept, maybe it has a charismatic main character, there's a cool setting, there are other characters that blend, that join in the action. And so all these books are, I'm going to discuss aspects of all these books. I don't know what this book would be. Character-driven for sure, look at that crazy girl and her dolls. So I choose things I love, I add a little imagination and spice, then I let time and distance act as heat does, simmering memories that may seem unwieldy down to their essence. A quote from Neil Gaiman is, you get ideas from daydreaming, you get ideas from being bored, you get ideas all the time. The only difference between writers and other people is that we notice when we're doing it. A couple of my first books, A Year of Birds and A Year of Bees, set here in Vermont, were months of the year concept books. So remember what I called a concept book? It could be a whole number of different things. It had charismatic main characters based on me and my little sister. And the passage of time and action were not as important. Some of the elements I included were true. I did grow up in the country. Lonnie, this is the picture from your doc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is where I've tried to figure out where the camp is. This is Lake Dunmore, where I live now, and that's Mount Moose Lamoo in the background. I did grow up in the country. I did love birds and animals. I did have a younger sibling. But some of the things, let's see, I needed to add spice to and cook a little bit more. I made Harry into a boy named Peter. I changed our age difference from 3 years to almost 5 years. And I moved my family out of Middlebury and into the real country. My second book was a character-driven book. It was about this cat who stays up all night while his family is in the house going about their evening and nighttime rituals. And I'm actually in the process right now of re-illustrating that book. It was published in 1985. And it was popular for quite a while, but then it eventually went out of print. I gave a copy, one of my precious leftovers, to my new editor, who's much younger and has little children. And she said, "Oh, I love this book, but the people are kind of dated. So would you think about re-illustrating it? You could just do the people." And I said, "Well, if I re-illustrated it, I would have to do the whole book." So back then it was a white family with 2 little kids. Now it's a mixed race family with 2 little kids. It doesn't matter where this book takes place. At the time, for me, it was very Vermont because it is a farm out on Munger Street. But I've been able to step back from that. And so what we were going to include is what is known nowadays as casual diversity, where there is diversity without it being the point of the book. It just happens. Okay, let's see, get my papers in order. So my earliest books took place all in Vermont, and because that's what I saw in my own mind's eye as growing up here as a child. But when I moved to California and I had 2 little boys, they became the lenses through which I was seeing the world. I was following them around and looking at things from their eye level. And I believe really strongly that no matter what kind of book you write, if you love what you're writing about, it will shine through in the writing. It's much better if you love the characters and the setting. All my books have been about subjects very dear to my heart.
Is that true of books you've illustrated too? So
not always.
you have to believe in the book before you illustrate it? Or?
I do have to believe in the book, but it doesn't have to be something I'm already familiar with and love. I can grow to love it as I do the research to do the illustrations. But most people don't know that illustrators are the ones who pick and choose. So we're offered a story, and we can say, I want to illustrate this story, and I will take this job, or I don't want to illustrate it. So I've turned down books that were about things that I didn't care about or that I had already done too many times. That happens. So sometimes you have a subject and you just need to find a plot. This is the hardest part for me. I always have a million main characters to use, but sometimes the plot is a little difficult. So I steal. It can be easiest to simply borrow a plot and use it as a vehicle for your own story and characters. The sources are all around you, and as long as you make it your own, there's nothing wrong with borrowing from the world's great literature. After all, Aristotle said it's not once nor twice, but times without number, that the same ideas make their appearance in the world. And I'm sure you've all noticed that. There are no new stories. They're just the same stories told over and over in different, innovative ways. So one day we were at the park and I saw a story. With a little help from Aesop's Tortoise and the Hare, I wrote a story called Stella and Roy, and here's how it happened. Our Sunday morning ritual was to go to Golden Gate Park, and in Golden Gate Park is a place called Stowe Lake, which is a circular lake. And the tradition was to walk or ride bikes around the lake and then have a snack. So I had two sons, Brennan, who was 5, who rode this big wheels trike, and Rowan, who was 18 months, and rode this little scooter with no pedals and streamers dangling from the handlebars. The book begins, one Sunday in spring, Stella and Roy took their bikes to the park. Stella's had 3 blue wheels and was built for speed. Roy's had 4 wheels, a wooden seat, and streamers dangling from the handlebars. It was built for coasting. So where have I already begun my cooking? What little details have I changed?
Stella.
Stella's now, Brennan's now a girl named Stella.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for explaining that, because I was like, wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's the author's prerogative. We can do whatever we want. It's our imaginative world.
She's a redhead.
We're world builders. In real life, Brennan was very easily distracted. He would stop, jump off his trike, try to catch a turtle, throw sticks in the water. He reminded me of Aesop's hare. Rowan, on the other hand, was slow but very focused. He was obviously the tortoise. Having my own kids as both the characters and the models for the illustrations was an added bonus. So I have changed it a bit, but see if you can spot Brennan as Stella in the illustration that became the basis for. Stella hopped back on her bike and sped away once more. "Bye-bye, housefly," she called to Roy as she passed him. But in the shade of the old pine, she met Officer Rowan and her horse, Mr. Lee. So Stella stopped again. And this time, Roy rolled all the way to the popcorn stand. So that's my version of the Tortoise and the Hare, but I went back to Aesop for another plot. I borrowed him for the sequel, which was The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And at the time, I wanted it to call The Boy Who Cried, I wanted to call it The Boy Who Cried Bear, but my editor was very insistent that that didn't tell you enough about what was going on and people wouldn't buy it. So we ended up calling it Stella and Roy Go Camping. I imagined Roy as the boy who cries wolf and Stella as the rest of the town who don't believe him. Again, I used 2 of my favorite models. And a setting that I loved. Anyone recognize that? Yeah, well, oops, I left that blue down there.
I knew it before.
Okay, good. My favorite spread is the one that shows the kids as they hike and observe. Big Sister Stella is being a total wet blanket about Roy's hopeful bear track sightings. So they've seen quite a few bear tracks by now, and this is kind of the last page before they make it to Lone Pine Lake. I took pictures in my backyard, and then I made them into illustrations. This one is, I don't have the text written down, but I've seen so many animal tracks, thought Stella. I wonder where all the animals are. And of course, she doesn't see anything that's watching her. The title page shows the boys packing their backpacks, Stella and Roy packing their backpacks. And it became this picture. And in the background, you can see a little black and white dog. Her name was Lucy, and she was the newest love object in the family, and destined to become the star of her own book. So I've had 3 puppies in my life. I have, my first one I got when I was 20 about, and I named her Pumpkin. And I made her into Miss Bindergarten. And she had a very long and successful posthumous life as a book character. My second puppy was named Lucy, and she has a book about her called When Lucy Goes Out Walking. I now have a third puppy, He's 18 months old, and I still haven't thought of a book for him. So, but I keep thinking about it. He has a very distinctive personality, and I know a book is going to present itself. So Lucy, I had my charismatic main character. Now, as usual, I need a plot. My definite preference is to always create books that have some sort of concept in them, because I want to be teacher-friendly. I want my books to be able to be used to please children and to be fun, but also to be able to use in school and be able to teach something very subliminally. I don't necessarily want to pound kids on the head with it, but I like it when there's something that can be gotten out of the book besides the story. So I chose to do one that emphasized the months of the year and the amazing changes that go on in a puppy's life from the time that they're about 8 weeks old, like in this picture, to the time that they're a year old, contrasting with the much more subtle changes that happen to a child of 5 or 6, like this little boy is. For the poems, I borrowed the rhyme scheme from the Big Rock Candy Mountain. And one of the things that you can do when you're a writer is just adapt existing poetry and popular song to your own words. And I was driving up from LA to San Francisco and listening to the soundtrack from Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I kept hearing, when Lucy goes out walking in California sun. I wrote out all the stanzas with as many words as each one has in Big Rock Candy Mountain, but that was way too long, so it got cut quite a bit. And one of the things I really wanted to do was to emphasize the changing of the months by using the artwork to create kind of a trompe-l'oeil effect. So this one is a very early sketch that didn't end up getting used. It was too complicated. But you can see if you look in the upper left hand and the lower right hand that you see February and April are both make an appearance. Whoops, wrong way. So this is what it ended up looking like in the final book. There's a little hint of February, a little hint of April, and then mostly March. Okay, so a little hint of October, a lot of November, and a little hint of December. And then this one was my favorite. When Lucy goes out walking and first December snows, she leaves a trail of big dog prints everywhere she goes. I'm not a pup, I'm all grown up in first December snows. So that's when Lucy goes out walking. That little boy reminded me of Brennan, and I found this old photograph of when he could walk through my legs, and contrasted it with one of visiting him in his new home in Boise, Idaho. And that uncovered for me memories of being a young mother. So the way I like to put it, it's like the passing of time can expose stories, just as rain exposes fossils on a hillside. I think that I was traumatized by young motherhood. There were so many difficult things about it that I just didn't want to immediately write about it, so it took me many years to kind of go back and revisit it. So I brushed off my old memories and dragged out a whole bunch of photos and got inspired to write a book called Me Baby, You Baby. It's a day to night concept book. So it starts in the morning and goes through to bedtime. And it's a celebration of the love between babies and mothers, both human and animal. So then I had to choose a setting. I chose the San Francisco Zoo, another one of my favorite places to draw. The chickens, the koalas, anything that would hold still for me. And then I started doing the dummy. So a lot of people hear the word dummy and they're not sure what I mean. It's the very small black and white, usually done on tracing paper, mock-up of a book. And because it's small and done quickly, and it can be changed over and over without a whole lot of trouble. So I call these sketches thumbnails. They're a little bit bigger, but not a whole lot. And I write my own words in, and sometimes I go back and change quite a bit. This one's me baby, you baby, look how you grew baby. Started out as a spread, but eventually ended up as a single page. And of course by now, because I had waited so long, my boys were all grown up. So I had to go look for some new children. And I found this little girl named Kelsey. She was the daughter of a friend, and so I spent a morning with her taking her picture. I used old memories and old photos of my own for the little boy. And this picture is a rather surprising love object. So I told you I don't put anything in my book unless I love it. The newspaper. I used to get my news this way. And now this mother would be checking her smartphone. It ended up switching from the mother of the little boy to the mother of the little girl. And finally, in addition to the zoo, I used the setting of my old neighborhood in San Francisco, which I really loved. It was kind of old, run down and very steep hill and steep streets. And so I put the houses that belonged to the two families right across the street from each other, and with the city in the background. And that became Me Baby, Me Baby. Finally, I would just like to talk about my 3 newest books. So, as I've been always writing about people, and finally I got an idea for an animal character, and I've always loved to draw animals. My relationship with bears has gone way back. This one, I'm not sure any of you know, but my younger sister, the little girl I drew at 4, grew up to be a veterinarian. So she is an exotic animal vet, and at this stage in her life she was living near LA and taking care of animals that were used in movies and commercials. So I was with her, and we went up into the mountains to visit this woman who had about a half a dozen bears. One of this woman's tricks to reward her bears was to get them to open their mouths wide, and she would spit into their mouth. This bear wants me to spit into her mouth. But I didn't. I almost kissed her though. So I have been around bears, I've been around animals on my own, from my own volition and through my sister my entire life. She liked to take care of them, I like to look at them. So I had done a lot of, and I put a bear as a prominent character in Stella and Roy Go Camping. And I had met these bears through her as well at a wildlife facility in Oregon. Their mother had been killed by a truck, and they were being held in a wildlife facility until they could be sent on somewhere that could actually take care of them. They were in a small cage about this high, and they were fighting over a carrot that was stuck through the top of the cage. And they were going, rah, 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 scratching each other and pushing each other out of the way. They were very vocal. Somehow you think of bears as just, I don't know, roaring? I don't know what sound bears make in the wild. But these bears sounded like angry cats. And their eyes, they were so expressive. They had little eyebrows. They reminded me of my dog at the time, who I did not get as a puppy, so I can't count her. She was a rescue, and her name was Tula, and she had these very blonde eyebrows that were always beseeching you. I had worked on a book that was pretty much the worst experience of my career, where I had gotten all the way to the finished book with the covers, but it hadn't quite been bound yet. And the author had got into a legal tussle with somebody who claimed he had actually written the text, and the book was never published. But the good thing that came out of it was pages and pages and pages of sketches of bears. So I got an idea to write a book about a baby bear and his mother, and make it a concept book about colors. And the bears in it, while they are talking to each other, are not anthropomorphized. They're not wearing clothes. They're not doing things that bears wouldn't do. So for me, this was kind of a great breakthrough. I wanted to show you a very quick sequence of how an idea evolves. So the text is baby bear saw green. This is how it began. Then I changed the viewpoint to pull out and look back at baby bear, change the text to say baby bear sees green. Still wasn't working. Then I get baby bear out of the den and leave mama behind. Still the same text. Finally, I give up on this altogether and make it a real big tree. So baby bear really sees green. And that's what it looked like when it's done. Some of the books that I do, many of the books that I do, about all three of the bear books, are done in kind of an old-fashioned technique where I use linoleum block prints to make the illustrations, and I hand color them with watercolor. So here are the blocks, several of the blocks for the book called Baby Bear Counts One. And if you've never tried this, it's like making a giant rubber stamp. You're carving away your white space rather than making a black mark the way most art is done. So I print them and then in black, and then I paint them with watercolors. Baby Bear Counts 7. And the final book that I did about Baby Bear, I'm not sure it will be the final book. I'd love to think of another concept that lends itself to actual bear behavior, is Where, Oh Where is Baby Bear? And it's a book about prepositions. So Baby Bear watches the bats fly out of the den. Baby Bear, he says, Mama says, Where, oh, where is Baby Bear? I am up in the birch tree, Mama. And then on one spread near the end, which reminds me a little bit of the one from Stella and Roy Go Camping, they go through the meadow, around the pond, across the river, between the birch trees, down the cliff, and into their den. And where, oh, where is Mama Bear? Cries Baby Bear. Here I am, Baby Bear, right beside you. And that's what they look like, and the end.
Oh, great.
So, does anyone have any questions about how to get books? I'm just going to get ideas. I'm just going to close this because the light is too bright. Otherwise,
Do you carry around like a drawing pad, a notebook, or something everywhere you go in case you get an idea to jot either down a sketch or an idea or something?
you know, that would be a great idea. I don't, because I have a phone.
Oh, did you used to?
Yes,
Yeah.
I used to, but now I am just a crazy picture taker. So if I have an idea, if it's a visual idea, I just take a picture of it. Sometimes I'll write myself a note and email it
Sure.
to me. That's a better way for me to keep track. Since, you know, that's actually something that I really can fit in my hip pocket, as opposed to a notebook. But whenever I travel, I have a notebook and colored pencils or watercolors with me. And I try to get as much travel sketching done as I can. Any other questions? Yeah.
Did Rhode Island School of Design teach you anything about the management of your career?
Not a damn thing. No. Did you go there too?
No.
No, not at all. I graduated in 1979. Took a year off in between some of my years there to work and live in Middlebury, but then eventually went back and graduated. And no, not at all. In fact, as an illustration major, I was treated pretty badly. It was not given any respect back then. Now I think it gets more, a little bit more respect, but back then it was all about being a painter. Probably still is. But, no, I figured it out myself, and I still don't think I figured it out. I feel like it's a very competitive field that you kind of have to market yourself a lot of the time, and that's very difficult, and I don't really have that kind of personality. So I rely on the Vermont Bookshop to do my marketing for me. Yeah. Yes.
Ashley, are you working on multiple books at a time? or-
Usually I am, yeah. But right now I'm just trying to get the artwork for Only the Cat Saw done. And trying to think of my story about Rufus. It's going to come to me.
Do any of your ideas come to you in dreams?
I don't think I've ever had a dream idea, no. A lot of my ideas come to me when I'm driving, for some reason. I don't know, maybe I just go on autopilot or something. So I'm kind of hoping that something will pop up. But I'm also happily doing a lot of painting and not too worried about it. Something always comes along. I haven't ever been without a book project. Yeah.
How long does it take you to do a book or a page,
Well,
whichever?
okay, so a book, you'd think it would be fairly straightforward, but a lot of times there are weeks that go by where you're waiting for an editor to get back to you or an art director to make up her mind, and then you redo the dummy, and then you wait again. So I always tell kids that if I start a book in September, if I'm lucky and everything kind of goes on schedule, I'll be done by Valentine's Day. But there have been years when I've done 3 books in a year. 2 is much more comfortable. And I mean, the other thing that people don't get is that writers can write anywhere. They can write in the car, they can write lying in bed, in their heads. I've been talking about picture book writers mainly. Writing a picture book is not a very time-consuming thing once you get the idea. Illustrating it, on the other hand, is a very time-consuming thing. Even if you have all the ideas, you have to have your butt in the chair and be, thinking about a whole lot. I have, as a writer and an illustrator, I can say that illustrators have much the harder job. Because we are really building the worlds that writers don't tell us what to do in any way. The words are the only things that exist for us, none of their ideas.
I'm curious, is it a collaboration? I mean, do you go back and forth? Does the
Nope.
writer ever change the words?
The writers sometimes
Because
will
of their
change the
own-
words if I ask them to. And I change the words. My editor and I work on the words up until the last moment,
When you're writing it yourself?
if I'm writing it myself. But usually if I don't think the words are working for some reason, I will go to the editor, they will go to the writer. I don't communicate directly to the writer.
So you never collaborate directly with any of the writers whose books you illustrate?
No, it's just
Interesting.
not, it's not
Not the
done.
way it's done?
No.
Huh.
I'm sure there are people who are good friends who collaborate,
Yeah.
but if you're strangers, no.
You're taking it as a paid gig, so to speak, and the writers?
No.
You've got...
We are co-equal with the writer. We both receive royalties
Okay.
exactly the same way.
Good.
We both own the book.
Uh-huh.
It's not the writer's book that was worked on by the illustrator. At least that's the way I look at it.
Mhm.
And I know that writers are very protective of their work, and they don't like to trust it into the hands of illustrators. They don't think we're going to do a good job. But I always reassure them we take it just as seriously as they do. We just don't necessarily see it exactly the same way. But, yeah.
Are the pictures that you make actually the same size as they wind up in the book?
Yes, pretty much they are. Yeah. Because that's, when you have a spread, this is a book that's 10 by 10, so a spread in the middle is going to be 10 by 20, You don't want to work much bigger than that.
So
Some
I'm
people
gonna flip
do.
on the other leg, and I might turn out one. No.
Some people do work larger and then it's reduced. But I find that this is a comfortable size for me and I don't need to work larger or smaller.
When do you take time off to do the work that you show in galleries?
Well, you know, Clara, I did that all this summer. I have been very unproductive since I moved back to Vermont in the book realm.
Uh-huh.
But I've been much more productive in the painting and just general creation.
Does it seem like a relaxing thing to do your own and not have to figure out everything in a book?
I think what's hard about doing books is the linear quality of them.
Yeah.
You know, you have to do 32 pages, or in my case, more often 40 pages. So that's 20 spreads. And that's just a lot of work. And if you take too much time off from it, you can kind of lose the thread. So it's good to be able to just do it boom, 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 like that. And it was hard when my mom was alive to get focused enough to work on it. And now that she's died, I sort of took the summer to do a lot of paintings. And now I'm ready to buckle down.
You had a beautiful show at the Town Hall Theater too.
That was my Day of the Dead show, and I have a show now at the Brandon Arts Guild.
Right.
Yeah. If anyone wants a nice outing, the Brandon Arts Guild is a lovely little gallery if you've never been there. Clara and I both show our work there. It's a co-op, so everyone who's a member is also works there. And so it's very, you know, egalitarian. I like that. Yes?
You mentioned that you were the daughter of and the granddaughter of artists, so I'm wondering about that influence as well as what brought you back to Vermont.
Okay, so Leanne, you're asking about the original title of my talk. So when I put together this show at the Brandon Arts Guild, it was right after my mother died, and I didn't know what to do, and I knew I had to have like 25 pieces of artwork to show by the end of August. And so I just sort of I went on autopilot and I started painting pictures of flowers because that's what she liked. And then I started putting them in vases that were made of Cornish kitchenware because that's what she liked. And
She, your mom.
I really got very into these bright, saturated colors and more abstract because she liked that. And then I went and took a watercolor workshop in Maine, and I realized, oh, this is what my dad liked to do. And this is what we used to do together. And I learned all these things, and this is what Lock Field taught me when I was in high school. And so I started, you know, pulling in all these memories of who had taught me to be an artist. And then one thing I'm really interested in, but I haven't been able to pull together and do a talk yet, is that my paternal grandfather was a very pioneering photographer in Germany in the 20s and 30s. And so I have all these books that he published, and he was a really good photographer, and obviously he was also an illustrator. He wrote the text and he illustrated with his own photographs. So I got very interested in thinking about how you inherit talents and what you do with those talents, and you know, do you make a living? Do you make it into a business? Do you manage to live on it? He did. He obviously had a studio, and I found this brochure that showed pictures of my dad as a little child, and it's all in German, unfortunately, so I can't read it, but the back cover says, "And what is the costume?" Which is, what does this cost? He was obviously hiring himself to be a child photographer. And so I thought there's something in common with this man who died in 1951 and who I never met. But it's come down through the generations. And now my own son, the Rowan, the little boy who was Roy, is trying to make a business in the film industry. He's wanted to act, but now he's writing, directing, and producing in addition. So how does that relate to his great-grandfather? I don't know. But I'm sure everyone in this room can point to something in their heritage, you know, oh yeah, I got that from that relative, and they got it from them, and we're hopefully passing it down to younger people. So,
Why back to Vermont? Why did you come back to Vermont?
oh, for
Very different.
to live by my mom, near my mom. She was ready for a daughter to be close by. Like so many young Vermonters, my sister and I kind of took off in our early 20s to bigger cities and more opportunity, and didn't think we could make a good living here. And yeah, the jury's still out on that, whether we ever could have. I probably could have worked anywhere, but it was good for me to be in a city at that time of my life.
We're glad you're back.
I'm glad I'm back too. I'm very glad I'm back. Well, thank you all so much for coming, for good questions, and for inviting me to be part of this group tonight. I think I'm going to join too.
No, we'd love to
Is
have
the
you.
DFA enough?
Hey, yeah. It's associates, isn't it?
Okay, good. You don't need
But,
any advance free.
thank you so much, and thank you all for coming.